Hello, and thank you for joining us today. This Making Flexible Working Work webinar is proudly brought to you by the Flexagility Group and Workable Wellness. My name is Vanessa van der Hoek, founder of Flexible Working Day, and I'm delighted to introduce you today, Heidi Dening. I'm so excited I can't hide it.
Well, that's nice.
I love your mantra, Heidi. It's be well, love life. Every email I get from you, I have a little smile, and it reminds me that that is why we're here. We need to be well and love life. And today you're going to share with us some tips. I'm sorry, I've just flicked the slide. Some tips on how we can embrace flexibility within our team to turn them from ordinary to extraordinary. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm so glad I could be here and support this enormously important initiative that you are running, Vanessa. I mean, the flexible work arrangement is such a crucial component for people to be well and to love their life. So I am glad that I can play a little small part in that.
Wonderful. And thank you again for your support as a Flexible Working Day ambassador this year as well, and getting the message out. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure.
So I'm not the best with driving slides, but I'll give it a go.
Yeah, okay. Well, I really wanted to talk first of all about how stress really prevents us from being able to look after ourselves well and perform at our best at work. And, you know, before we even put any of the good work in around flexibility, we really need to have to deal one step behind that to deal with the stress that goes on. Because when we do have a lot of workplace stress, it really impacts us as individuals being able to perform to the roles that we have, but also it impacts the entire team that we're in. And, you know, the World Health Organization says that stress is a global health epidemic of the 21st century. And the latest stats show us that 1 in 4 employees rate their jobs as the number one stress in their life.
Wow.
So, you know, stress is really having an impact on us. And how this relates to flexibility is, though, that when we have flexible work arrangements, we are able to better look after ourselves. And we're better able to deal with the stress that shows up in our life. I mean, I always say, you know, we can't control the stress that comes into our life. You know, at work, there's going to be impossible deadlines, there's going to be redundancies, there's going to be budget cuts, there's going to be cranky customers. And in our private lives, there's going to be ill health, and there's going to be pain and injury and small children and aging parents. You know, none of that we can control. All we can control is what we put in place in our lives to ensure we're not so reactive to stress when it rears its ugly head. And flexible work days and arrangements actually allow us to put things in place so we aren't as reactive to stress. And that is why I'm so passionate about flexible work arrangements.
And you know what you said there about it's different for everybody, isn't it? So
yes,
I've heard of a company who embraces Empower Hour. So they say on a Wednesday morning, use Empower Hour for whatever you want. Is it going to the gym? Is it going for a swim? Is it going for a walk? Is it doing yoga? Whatever way that you can empower yourself to really help, exactly what you said there, address some of the stress in your life through exercise. It has to be used for moving or meditation. It works, and the staff were just wrapped. After 12 months, you should have just seen their faces. Whenever you say Empower Hour, they get all excited.
Oh, that's great.
There definitely is something in that endorphins raising.
Absolutely. And, you know, even that's why, I mean, Deloitte have this great policy of no meetings before 9 a.m. Now, you know, Deloitte are very traditional, probably more traditional with their kind of working hours. So this is a really big step for them. And I really tip my hat because, you know, that policy started because they would have a lot of clients in the Northern Hemisphere, so they were having phone calls late at night, and therefore the expectation used to be that perhaps there was a 7:30 breakfast meeting. But, for someone who's been on the phone at 2 a.m., that's not, it's not really fair that they've got to then be at work so early. So this ban on meetings before 9 a.m. started for that particular reason. But what's happened now is that people who do want to do their exercise in the morning can do their exercise. For those who want to walk their dog, can do that. Yeah. For others who've got small children who want to pack lunches and get them off to school, can do that. And even those who have really long commutes like we do in cities like Sydney, don't have to get up at the crack to get to work. So I love that, just these kinds of policies, and you really need to make them policies to say it out loud. So it's making the invisible visible is what I always say, because often leaders will think, oh no, we allow for that. But until you say it out loud and make it policy, it often gets lost in all the communication, and people don't actually know that that's something that's possible in their workplace.
And I suppose we don't know what we don't know, do we? Like
No.
Travel commute in Sydney. I forget that. Like, I used to live in Sydney, and I totally forget that, you can spend up to 3 hours a day. It's not unusual to spend 2 to 3 hours a day in traffic, which no doubt would contribute to your stress levels.
Oh gosh, yeah, very much so. I mean, the road rage in itself. Trying to find a park in Sydney, it's like, oh my gosh, it's such a nightmare. So yeah.
And I hear a lot of people saying they leverage flexible work in a way that they could work from home a couple of days a week, which saves them 4 to 6 hours a week in travel, which is absolutely extraordinary. It's amazing.
Oh, what an impact that can have on your life.
What a huge impact. Massive benefit. And also a big benefit, one of the organisations I do some work with, the CEO was saying it's a no-brainer for him, because his staff are then able, exactly what you said around, they're able to come back to work rejuvenated, basically, because they've had, a long weekend or a day where they haven't had to endure that extra travel commute. It's just another piece of the puzzle, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, time adds up, and when you start to do the maths on it, you can really see what a difference it makes to just not have to spend a lot of time travelling. And that's a beautiful part of the workplace arrangements.
I like your photo here. Is this you?
Yeah. It's not me, definitely not. But what I wanted to touch on here is just to kind of say out loud that a little bit of stress is okay. In fact, when we have a little bit of stress, we find things quite challenging. It keeps us motivated. We stick to deadlines. But it's when stress, starts to really take over, and, there's just too many responsibilities, too many emails in our inbox, too many people wanting to, have our advice or to lead them or to manage them. And what happens, I describe it, the difference between being stressed out and burnt out is, stressed out is more like being dumped on a great big wave. I'm sure we've all experienced that, where, we're tumbling and turning, and the force of the water is kind of throwing us from side to side, and we just keep paddling and paddling and paddling until we can finally get our head up into the air to take that deep breath. And when we're stressed out, it's kind of the same feeling, like we're just kind of doing everything quickly, but we know that if we can just get on top of things, that will be okay. The difference is that when we're burned out, and if you go to that next slide, it's more like being on a dried up lake, and it's more, it's about not enough. We're devoid of motivation, we don't care anymore, and, it just feels like there's, no vegetation in sight, no sign of water, and we don't have the motivation to kind of get ourselves up and over whatever the challenge is. And the problem is that when we go from being stressed out and spiraling out of control into being burnt out, this is when the problems arise. And, that's why I wanted to bring this up, because a flexible work arrangement can make the difference to having some stress in our life, but it will stop us, hopefully, from that spiraling out of control into burnout. And sometimes, we don't come back out of burnout once we're there. At the moment, I'm doing a speaker series around Australia for the financial executive women. And in Australia, 78% of people in the finance industry have burnout at some stage in their career. Now, that is a whole lot of people who are not able to sustain the energy and the responsibility required of them. It's part of my passion of life to help people put things in place so they actually don't spiral out of control into that burnout.
And if you're listening today and you've been on holidays, so maybe cast your mind back to the Christmas holidays or a holiday last year, you got sick. I think that's a real classic sign. I hear people all the time say, I had to look forward to my amazing holiday and I got sick.
Yeah.
Kind of adrenal fatigue. It means that you're running on high levels of adrenaline, and as you start to relax and your body physiologically starts to get into this space, your adrenal glands go in overdrive basically and make you sick.
Absolutely.
What
yes.
Here is sometimes we're operating in that space. We don't even know it. We're actually close to that burnt out phase without actually realizing it, because it has become our new normal way of operating.
Absolutely. And the thing is, Vanessa, you don't wake up one morning and you're burnt out. Right. It doesn't happen overnight. Our brain and body usually gives us warning signs about what's going on, but we often just either choose to ignore them, or we actually don't understand that these are the things that our body and our brain are trying to tell us about. And, our physical health is one of a beautiful example, just what you said, because, we get pain and headaches, and we get stomach problems, and we get cold sores, and we don't recover from colds and flus, headaches. All of these things show up physically when we are getting close to burnout. And it's just one of those matters that, when we can understand how burnout and stress shows up for us, we can intervene in time so that we don't spiral out of control.
That's why I love working with you, Heidi. It's hand in glove, isn't it? Flexible.
Yeah.
Workable.
Absolutely. And it's what's interesting, it leads us to this next slide, in fact, because, during the workshops and education programs that I do, people will always kind of say, they'll indicate that they don't have time to look after themselves, that it's just impossible with the workload and then the family responsibilities that they have. But when we dig a little deeper, we often find that it's actually due to people having to work the traditional hours that prevents them from looking after themselves. So, when people can actually do the things they need to do to be at their best at times that suit their lives.
That's a trick.
Wow. Oh, yeah. They can just thrive at work. And, I see the repercussions of this all the time when people can focus and concentrate when it matters. So we often see all these new groovy workplaces that are all open plan, and, people can go from desk hopping and all of this. And it is brilliant for collaboration, and you feel the energy in those workspaces. But when people need to do the deep work and really focus and concentrate, sometimes that workplace is not the right environment for them. So what arrangements are in place that they can be working somewhere else where they're not distracted as much as they would be in their workspace? And it's interesting. I was just working with a software company in Western Australia, and when we had a look at this and unpacked what was going on, because they really felt that their whole productivity levels were being lowered. We identified there was about $600,000 worth of lost focused time a year in their company. And and it's not until you really look at this, and they've put now things in place, flexible work arrangements in place, so that they can overcome that and allow people to be able to focus and concentrate when they need to do that deep work. But on the flip side of that, as the slide says, we also need to be able to rest and rejuvenate, because our brain, if we go to the next slide, our brain can only be of its best when it gets, to have good memory and speed and creativity and to be able to analyze and strategize when it gets a chance to have a break. And these micro breaks, I like to call them, are really opportunities for our brain to do so much better. And I liken it to, going to the gym, and if you're at the gym and you're doing bicep curls and you're curling and you're curling and you're curling, well, eventually you've got to give that muscle a rest for it to be able to continue to work for you. And our brain is exactly the same. It does need an opportunity to rest and rejuvenate. And again, this is when the flexible work arrangements can allow for that.
It is challenging, isn't it? Because we are addicted to technology.
Mm.
I read a study that said, I think it was, we spend more time on our iPhones, iPads, whatever you call them, devices of an evening than talking to the people who matter.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Yeah,
which is interesting. So if we can't even put our devices down, like you said, it's a challenge.
It is a challenge. It really is.
So has it taken you time to work out what works for you around that rest and rejuvenation? Because I know for me, it's taken me a good 2 decades.
Oh, yeah. I'm still a work in progress, there's no doubt. And, I'm no different to anybody else, especially when there's deadlines and things are really hectic and intense. I mean, it's really hard to put yourself first and to prioritize taking time out to rejuvenate yourself, whether that be to just get outside in the fresh air and move the body so there's oxygen and blood flowing to the brain, or whether it's to just not work all day Sunday because you have big deadlines coming up early in the week, but to actually give yourself the chance to rest and rejuvenate, because the point is we get more done in less time and with less mistakes when we've given ourselves a break.
Mm. And I remember a lady telling me once that she couldn't work out the conflict in her relationship. And so, I'm sorry, that feedback, is that from mine?
Yeah, I can hear it there. That's it. That's better.
And she said, on a Friday night, oh no, I could try and put my headphones in. Hold on, let's see if this fits. My apologies. Did that kill it?
That seems to cut. Yeah, that's better.
And it was really interesting hearing what she said. She said on a Friday her partner liked to go out and be social and really get out there and have a good night. And then on Saturday morning he was rejuvenated. And for her it was opposite. She could think of nothing worse than going out on Friday night and partying. She wanted to come home in her slippers on the couch and watch TV. And that's what worked for both of them.
Yes.
It was almost like when she said that, it gave me and the other women in that group that permission to say, you know what, it is okay if that's the way that you get rejuvenated, to spend the time at home doing nothing.
Absolutely.
Relaxing.
Oh yeah.
But sometimes, like you said, you've got to work through what works for you and giving yourself permission.
Yeah, and we're also different. So what rejuvenates one person, it doesn't to another, and what motivates us is so different. So yeah, everything's really specific to our own lives, and often it just takes someone to talk that through with, just to make that realization. But it's really important that we do what's right for us, not what everyone tells us we should do. I mean, I would have hit my alarm and turned it off maybe 2,000 times in the mornings when I thought I was going to get up and exercise, because I know morning exercise is the best time to do it, and it's great for your brain. You're going to be focused and efficient all day if you do it. But I hate it. Hate it. So I can't make myself do it, and that's okay. I've now got over that, and I give myself permission to sleep when I need to and exercise when I need to, and that's flexibility for you. That's what we love.
Exactly. It works for you.
Yeah. Yes. All right. This next slide, it's really important to acknowledge this, because when we can do all the things for ourselves that makes us the best you know, the best person we can be in regard to our brain's capacity, our body's capacity, our cognitive ability, our decision-making capabilities, all of that. When we can be our best with all those things, we are a far better team member. And you know, when this whole kind of war on talent thing is going on and people talk about the, you know, attraction and the retention and how important it is to have the right people in your teams, I think this is where the flexibility really brings this out even more, because when we can do what we need to do to reduce our own stress and put things in place that's specific to our lives, we're going to be a far better person within a team at work. And when you are in a great team and all those members of that team are able to be their best selves because they have the flexibility to do that, then the companies are going to be able to keep the great top talent within those companies. And, you know, everyone wants to stay in a team and in a company that is thriving. And I think that's where there's this kind of direct link for flexible work arrangements to creating extraordinary teams, because we all can be the best we can be within our team. And you know, there's nothing more unmotivating than being in a great team and someone leaves, maybe because they're burnt out and they're not coping, but with that leaves energy and IP and you know, a whole heap of knowledge and connectiveness. So that's why the flexible work arrangements really highlights, you know, extraordinary teams.
Gorgeous. And like you said, the monetary, the productivity, and
oh yes, and you know,
if you're a leader listening and you want to save big bucks, get in touch.
Definitely, and this is why, you know, it is up to the workplace, the employers and the leaders to curate workplaces that allow people to be the best they can be at work. And they can only be the best selves when they're not stressed out and they're able to look after themselves.
So you've got this Stress Less Challenge, which is a
yes
3-week, 21 day.
Yeah, look, you know, just with all the work I do around this topic and knowing the rates of stress and burnout that's escalating in this country and around the world, I've actually made it my goal to educate and inspire 20,000 leaders by 2020 on how they can strengthen their resilience muscles and sleep more and stress less is the goal. And because, see, I really believe that when I can do that, the leaders will then send a ripple effect of vitality, resilience and optimism into their teams, into their families, and into their communities. And this potentially improves the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. So, and that's why I curated this Stress Less Challenge, just so I could reach as many people as possible on how they can strengthen their resilience muscles so they can cope better with life. I'd really love to offer it to the Flexible Workday attendees in the series that you're creating, Vanessa, so we can continue to do the good work and help people to be able to look after themselves and not be so reactive to the stress that they can't control that comes into their lives.
Absolutely, fantastic. So tell us a little bit more. So how do we register? We go to stresslesschallenge.com.au, and what can we expect?
Yeah, if you go to that URL, there's a video of me that explains how the challenge works. Basically, it's 21 days. We have 7 modules of 3 days each. So at the beginning of each module, you'll get a video lesson from me on what you need to do over the next 3 days to help you stress less. And the idea is that we're kind of trying on what works for you, because not everything works for everybody, but for the 21 days, we're going to try the different strategies that I've been able to see works for most busy professionals. And at the end of that 21 days, I can ensure that there'll be 1 or 2 strategies that each individual can do going forward to make sure they continue to stress less and be able to be their best self.
How fantastic. That is wonderful. So log on to that website, www.stresslesschallenge.com.au. Watch Heidi's video and register.
Yes.
Is there a time frame for that registration, Heidi?
No, that's there for people to, they can go to, whatever day, probably the day they're feeling the most stressed, they might decide that they really need that. But the idea is it's to help with the reaction, but hopefully we'll have a bit of prevention strategy so things don't spiral out of control into burnout. So that's there for you.
So start day one, hopefully today.
Hopefully today. Yeah, I'll be waiting.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Heidi, for sharing your insight today. It's been wonderful. And in your words, be well, love life.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on the webcast series.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy Flexible Working Day.
Happy Flexible Working Day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.